Hello and welcome to another edition of Tuesdays with Liz, a disability policy for all. Today I'm very excited because we're interviewing two of my colleagues, Kim Mash and who is the director of public policy, and Micheal, who is the associate director here at ESEA. We're going to be interviewing them. I'm going to be interviewing them about a really important topic for all of us, education and the Elementary Secondary Education Act. So welcome. Thank you for coming in and talking to us.
Glad to be here, Liz.
Thanks for having us.
Okay. The first question is, and to you, Kim, why is the Elementary Secondary Education Act important to students with disability? I thought that we already have our rights under IDEA.
That's true. The IDEA is really important for students with disabilities in providing a free and appropriate public education. However, believe it or not, most students with disabilities are educated along with other students without disabilities, and so the general education law, the ESEA, is really important to us as well. And so we want to make sure that the Elementary and Secondary Education Act provides the right supports and services to students with disabilities. So the ESEA, when it was reauthorized in 2001, became the No Child Left Behind, and it really built upon IDEA and connected the two a lot more, so that students with disabilities were served better, and it made sure that all kids were included in the accountability systems. It made sure that students with disabilities were taught to the general education curriculum like everyone else, and also they had to be part of all the statewide annual assessments, which meant that teachers had to be trained well to help those students, and they had to be provided the services and supports they needed to do well on those annual statewide assessments. And so it's been really important for students with disabilities.
Thank you, Kim. And Micheal, while you worked for Senator Harkin, you were able to help draft a bill to reauthorize this elementary secondary ed. That's great. What are some of the important parts that you helped Senator Harkin work on? And is AUCD trying to make sure that this gets into this Congress?
Absolutely, I'll be happy to share that with you. And I'll start off with what Kim was talking about, that it's essential that students with disabilities are part of the high expectations that are in any federal bill. So they need to have access to the same curriculum. And I'll tell you a really quick story. Back in the 1980s and 90s, when I worked in a lot of schools, I'd go into a program for a student with a disability, and they might have had books that were 40 years old, or they only had coloring books, or they really had no expectations at all. So what Kim said about making sure that students have the same access to the material and instruction that other students have is so important. So that should be in the law. Likewise, those students should be tested. They should be assessed and their progress measured so that we know how they're doing, and then that information should be available to everybody, Liz, so that a mom or a dad or a community member or the student, him or herself, can know how that school's doing with children with disabilities, with students with disabilities. There's a bunch of other stuff that should be in there too. We should have restrictions on seclusion and restraint. We should make sure that the money that is spent from the federal government is distributed equally across all the schools, so that particularly so that students coming from poorer families are getting additional resources and additional help. And hopefully what we'll see in this process is those things will all be in a new bill.
So it reminds me a lot about Nothing Families Without Me.
I think that's a great way to think about it. And because students with disabilities are in the general curriculum, like Kim said, they absolutely need to be included in this whole process. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And Kim, I know that Chairman Lamar Alexandra and Senator Patty Murray have helped work out a bipartisan bill that was passed by the help desk. Did ESEA prepare to get into the bill?
That's a great question. Liz, you're right. Chairman Alexander and Ranking Minority Member Patty Murray, they worked behind the scenes for several months in a bipartisan way to develop a bipartisan agreement, which was then recently passed by the Health, Education, Labor, and Pension, or HELP Committee, as we call it. And we're very pleased. Murray and Alexander really did a good job in listening to the disability and civil rights community and making sure that a lot of our priorities actually did get into the bill. So we're pleased that, for example, some of those accountability provisions, the statewide annual testing is still in there. It's very limited the number of students with disabilities that are pushed into kind of alternate tests that put them off track to get a regular diploma, which is really, really important, because if you get a regular diploma, you have a better chance, obviously, of getting a job and or going on to post-secondary education. So those are very important to us. And during the markup, we were very pleased that we got an amendment related to restraints and seclusion, and so the statewide the state plan has to have policies in place to reduce the use of restraints and seclusion in school, which is overused too often on students with disabilities or other minority groups. It's unfair. So we're quite pleased about some of the provisions that got in. However, we're not happy with the whole bill. There's still a lot of work to be done because we didn't get everything that we think is really important for all students. For example, one of our big priorities is that we want to make sure that any schools where students are continually failing, there should be a requirement that they do something about that to make sure that those kids are doing better. There needs to be a do something amendment. And we're working really hard along with the civil rights community and other disability organizations, trying to educate all the senators, because it's all Students Achieve Act. That's the new name of the bill. We think that will be taken up by the full Senate sometime before Memorial Day recess, and so we're Ben Jackson, our policy fellow, and I have been on the Hill every day talking to senators.
Great.
And if I can stick one thing in here, Liz, it's important, like Kim said, that not only that students are assessed as to how they're doing, but as Kim said, that there is a trigger that says if you're not doing well enough, you have to do more. That's what real accountability is. And right now, both the House and the Senate bills, they don't have that. They leave it to the state to determine when to do something. And what we saw in the past was that when it was left to the states, some states just didn't do anything. So we really need some intervention to make sure that students who are falling behind get more support and more instruction.
Great. Kim, you mentioned about markup. Can you just briefly explain what the markup is?
Right, I did. I said that the Health Committee marked up the bill. A markup is when all the senators get together in the committee room and offer amendments. So they offer changes to the bill. That's the chance for all the committee members to participate in the process, because all the members have different priorities that they want to get in, and then those changes they offer either pass or don't pass. And the same thing will happen on the Senate floor. There'll be lots of senators wanting to offer amendments because this is a very important bill, and so we expect the Senate debate to last quite a long time because there probably will be a lot of amendments.
Okay, thank you. And Michael, you both have talked a lot about the Senate.
Mm-hmm.
What about the House? Has this been through the House?
So it's partly been through the House. It went through the House Committee on Education and Workforce. It came out of that committee as on a partisan vote. None of the Democrats on the committee voted for it. And it was initially, it went to the floor of the House to get a vote, but the leadership found they didn't have enough votes to pass it, so they actually pulled it back. And it looks like sometime over the next month or so, it'll move to the House floor again for a vote. And as you know, a bill has to pass both the House and the Senate before it becomes law. So it looks like in the next month or so, Liz, we'll see those bills going both to the Senate floor and to the House floor for votes.
Okay, thank you. And we're very excited because we have invited Senator Alexander to
That's great.
Be here on a Tuesday with Liz, so we're hoping that he'll pick us up on that offer.
I hope he does too.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Liz.
And thank you. And if you have any questions about this edition of Tuesday with Liz, a disability policy for all, please leave them in the space below. And if you have any questions or questions about anything that we have talked about, please go to the AUCG webpage and look for this week's In Brief, and have a wonderful day, and I look forward to talking to you next week. Thank you again, Michael and Kim.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Liz.